Hello, future ready educators. I'm your host, Lisa Hockenberry, and I look forward to sharing this week's topic with you. I want to share some ideas on the five C's SAMR, makerspace, and putting it all together. Using the five C's and SAMR model in your lessons brings in the future ready skills, exposing the students to the five C's from early on and having them utilize these skills regularly grows your students and prepares them for future endeavors. So, where do we start? Looking at our digital activity planning document, we start with the learning outcomes or the TEACs, and we can use the following questions, which you might notice are part of the PLC questions. What do you want your students to learn, and how will we know they learned it? What digital learning activity, including a tech tool, will students do to show their learning? And how will they demonstrate the skills to master the TEACs using the digital activity and EdTech tool? I'm going to go through using the second grade TEKS in Science 2.9c. Compare the ways living organisms depend on each other and on their environments, such as through food chains. We want students to know the food chains of animals on a basic level and compare how living things depend on each other. For instance, what would happen if we remove a piece of the food chain? So students can show their understanding by building a food chain and then they explain how the animals depend on each other and what would happen if a piece is removed. They can demonstrate this through building a food chain using our makerspace materials like Connects. They can build it and explain it on Seesaw, Flipgrid, or Book Creator if you don't have a makerspace with materials yet. So you can see in this example, I went through the questions and then gave some ideas on how students can show their learning in a digital activity. So now we can move on to the next part of the planning document, digging into the details and use the following questions to help build our digital activity. What prerequisite skills will they need for the skill or content they're working on? Using the clarifying document, we can see that in first grade they learned about the transfer of energy from one organism to another. So we'll need to make sure they understand that understand that and where a food chain begins. Once we have an understanding of the prerequisite of the skill, we can decide what activity and or ed tech tool we can use. So, what activity or a tech tool will we use? Well, we can have students use the makerspace area and use the connects that are in all the pods for my Smith campus um, to build a food chain. And then we can use Flipgrid as the ed tech tool to explain and share their understanding of the concept. What prerequisites will they need to know to be successful with the digital activity and ed tech tool? They will need to know Flipgrid, how to use it. They'll need to know the expectations for the makerspace area. So here we can make a plan to show them Flipgrid ahead of time during a low risk time. A great place can be during morning meetings or while they arrive in the morning. And one suggestion I would make is that when they're exploring, you keep yourself hands off and really allow them to explore the tool with each other or on their own. So if they come up to you and say, "How do I do this?" or "What do I do?" I simply always responded with, "Well, I'm not sure. I want you to go explore, and then you come back and let me know how to do it." And so that way it fosters that independence and it fosters that communication collaboration because they're going to seek help with their classmates. And you'd be amazed at what you see the kids learning when they explore it on their own. And so now that we have now that we have that part of the plan done. And now that we have the lesson outcome and the activity using Connects to build food chains and Flipgrid to show their learning, let's ensure we have some five C's in place. So we can ask these questions. What five C's will be the focus of this lesson to allow for student-led collaboration, creativity, communication, and or critical thinking along with digital citizenship? Which ways can the EdTech tool facilitate the five C skills you chose? Out of the five C's, we can hit communication, collaboration, because they'll work in small groups or partnerships to build their food chains. They'll also have to communicate and collaborate with each other to get this job done. And this is also a great place to use Kagan structures or variation to have jobs so to ensure that one person doesn't take over or that some don't participate. This also hits critical thinking because they will have to think about how to build the food chain using materials they have available. And then creativity will shine through as well because the students will be able to create their own food chain. You know you have a great activity when you're hitting multiple C's. And then once we're adding in the Flipgrid piece, we're also going to now hit critical thinking again because they will have to explain their learning and what they built. with their food chains. And so, continuing on the planning document, let's assess where we are in the SAMR model. We can ask ourselves, where is our activity on the SAMR model? And so we're hitting that augmentation by bringing in Flipgrid for them to share and explain their learning. And the next question is, how can we make adjustments to move it up the scale? Well, we can adjust by opening the Flipgrid to the whole grade level and allowing for time for students to respond to each other. This brings it up to modification. This allows for feedback to happen between students. Well, we could take it up another level even further by partnering up with a grade level in our district or maybe across the country, who knows. But this is a great place to bring your DLC in for some support. It's very simple to move up or even down on the SAMR model, depending on what your outcome is for your students and where you want them to be. So now that we have a pretty good plan, we can move to the implementation and assessment part of the planning document, asking these questions. How will you implement the digital activity and EdTech tool? And what materials do we need? What support do you need from your DLC? And how will you assess the digital activity and EdTech tool? Think rubrics and checklist. We can decide where the best place in the lesson is for this activity to happen. And seeing how this is kind of showing what they've learned, it's going to go towards the end of a lesson. And so, what materials will we need? Well, we're going to need the makerspace reserved. We're going to need the connects to set out. We're going to need direction cards with possible sentence stems for the building of the food chains. We'll need a Flipgrid built for the students and a link available. And then, what support do we need from our DLC? Well, I'm always going to tell you to reach out to your DLC. This is one of our favorite parts is collaborating with you guys to ensure meaningful digital activity. So they can give you support in collecting those materials, making any materials needed, and collaborate with you to make it the most successful endeavor that you have. And so then another important question is how will we assess and will students know they're on the right track? Well, giving that student friendly rubric to the students is always a great way to assess. And that way, everyone is aware of the expectations. So, to be clear is to be kind. And this lowers the chances of misunderstandings with your students. And here's also another great place to reach out to your DLC for support on that rubric building. And so we've kind of gone through the whole planning document at this point, except we have one last piece. And so now that we've prepared to give the students the activity, we need to answer those last PLC questions. So, what is your plan for feedback, and how will we respond when students do not learn it? And how will you extend learning for students who are already proficient? Answering these questions will prepare you for the next steps in the lesson. We can give oral feedback as the groups are working on their projects. You can also give feedback through Flipgrid. The thing to think about is to make sure you have time for them to receive the feedback on their projects. You can also have students give feedback to each other as well. And a great time for them to review their feedback is in the mornings when they arrive, the first 5 minutes of science. Giving time for students to review feedback is as crucial as giving the feedback. We can respond to students that are not learning by using the food chain examples that we have available in our Flipgrid that are accurate and can help the students understand in another student's words. You can also pull small groups of students to review the food chains while the ones that did get it can extend their learning. This is another crucial place to put in time to respond to their learning in your plans. If they do get the learning, how can we extend? We can have them build food chain booklets on Google Slides or have them create a food chain quiz for the students. So, really, the sky's the limit on those extensions and how you respond. It's what your team decides and what is best for your students. So, it takes you through the planning process of a digital activity using Makerspace. And you will notice that the 4 PLC questions are answered by the end of the planning document. This is all grounded in what you already do. It shouldn't be one more thing. We want to just tweak a little bit of what you're already doing in your planning. This helps you to be meaningful in your digital activities and ensure that future ready skills are part of your students' day, which is our focus in the district. Your DLCs are here to support you and can help your team work and build meaningful digital activities. So, until next time, Future Ready podcasters, I look forward to collaborating with you on upcoming lessons to build these activities that will showcase your students' future ready skills. Hashtag Be Future Ready.